Welcome to Inside USA Today. We're diving into one of the most turbulent chapters in American history, a time when the United States faced a division so profound it nearly fractured the nation's core. This wasn't a single event, but a slow, grinding split that pitted neighbor against neighbor, community against community, and state against state, all wrestling over the very soul of America. How did a nation founded on the idea of a pluribus unum out of many, one find itself so deeply at odds? The story really picks up steam in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Picture this. Two Americas were emerging. On one side, you had bustling, diverse, urban centers, driven by technology, finance, and global trade. On the other, vast rural and suburban landscapes, rooted in agriculture, manufacturing, and traditional values. These weren't just geographical differences, they were ideological fault lines. What one side saw as progress, the other saw as a threat to their way of life. Economic policies that benefited coastal cities often felt like they were leaving the heartland behind. The decline of manufacturing jobs in the Rust Belt, for instance, created deep economic anxiety, which contrasted sharply with the booming tech hubs on the West Coast. This economic disparity wasn't just about money, it was about dignity, purpose, and a sense of being left behind by a rapidly changing world. The gap between the haves and the have-nots grew wider, and with it, the sense that the American dream was no longer accessible to everyone. Then came the media. The 24-hour news cycle and the rise of partisan media outlets began to change the way people consumed information. Instead of a shared set of facts, Americans were increasingly living in separate realities, fed by narratives that confirmed their existing beliefs. If you watched one channel, you saw a country thriving under strong leadership. If you switched to another, you saw a nation on the brink of collapse. This wasn't just reporting the news, it was shaping perceptions, and often amplifying fears. The media landscape became a battleground, where every story was framed as a win for one side and a loss for the other. This constant barrage of conflict made compromise seem impossible and turned political opponents into sworn enemies. The political arena itself became more polarized than ever. Landmark court decisions on deeply personal issues, like marriage and healthcare, didn't settle debates, they ignited them. Political campaigns transformed from contests of policy ideas into full-blown culture wars. Elections were no longer just about who would run the government. They were about defending your identity, your values, and your vision for America. The rhetoric grew harsher, more personnel. Politicians who once sought common ground were now rewarded for taking uncompromising stances. Nationwide protests erupted over issues of justice, equality, and civil rights, with millions taking to the streets. These movements were powerful and necessary, but they also highlighted just how deeply divided the country was on fundamental questions of fairness and freedom. And then, social media threw gasoline on the fire. Platforms designed to connect us ended up creating echo chambers. Algorithms fed us content that we already agreed with, reinforcing our biases and making it harder to understand differing viewpoints. Every argument, every disagreement was amplified and broadcast to millions. A minor local dispute could become a national outrage overnight. Nuance was lost, replaced by outrage and viral hot takes. It became easier to demonize someone you'd never met, reducing complex human beings to a single tweet or a profile picture. Families were torn apart by arguments that started online and spilled over into Thanksgiving dinners. Friendships that had lasted 4 years dissolved over political posts. The digital world was mirroring and magnifying the rifts in the real world. This division seeped into every corner of American life. It wasn't just politics anymore. Communities saw longtime neighbors stop speaking to each other. School board meetings turned into shouting matches over curriculum. Even cultural institutions that once brought people together became sources of conflict. Hollywood movies and TV shows were scrutinized for their political messages. Professional sports, once a unifying pastime, became a stage for protests and debate, with athletes using their platforms to speak out on social issues. This led to boycotts and arguments over what it meant to be patriotic. Public discourse reflected a nation at war with itself, where every choice from the coffee you drank to the stores you shopped That could be seen as a political statement. The very fabric of society seemed to be unraveling, leaving many to wonder if a unified America was even possible anymore. But that's not the whole story. Because in the midst of all this conflict, something remarkable began to happen. Away from the national headlines and the shouting on cable news, glimmers of hope emerged. In towns and cities across the country, people started pushing back against the division. They were tired of the anger, tired of the fear. Local leaders, faith groups, and everyday citizens began the hard work of rebuilding bridges. They organized town halls where people with wildly different views could actually talk to each other, face to face, not as caricatures, but as neighbors. They started community programs that brought people together to work on common goals, like cleaning up a park or supporting a local school. They created cultural exchanges where people from different backgrounds could share their stories, their food, and their traditions, breaking down stereotypes one conversation at a time. These weren't grand, sweeping solutions. They were small, patient, and deeply human efforts. They were stories of resilience, of people refusing to let division define them. They were stories of compromise, of finding that sliver of common ground, no matter how small. And they were stories of dialogue, of rediscovering the power of listening. These local heroes reminded us that unity isn't something that's handed down from on high. It's built from the ground up, one relationship at a time. They showed that even in the most divided of times, the desire for connection, for community, for understanding, is a powerful force. So, what can we learn from this period of intense division as we conclude our investigation on Inside USA? The lesson is clear. The story of a divided America is not simply a tale of conflict and collapse. It's a complex mosaic of human ambition, belief, and identity. It serves as a powerful reminder that division can threaten a nation, but it can also force us to reflect on who we are and who we want to be. It can inspire innovation as people find new ways to connect and communicate. And it can lead to a deeper, more mature understanding of the incredible diversity that makes up this country. The journey through this turbulent chapter of history teaches us that unity is not a destination we arrive at, but a constant process of engagement and renewal. It requires us to remember our history, to learn from our mistakes, and most importantly, to keep the channels of dialogue open, especially when it's difficult. The future of the nation depends not on erasing our differences, but on learning to navigate them with respect, empathy, and a shared commitment to a more perfect union. The work continues across generations, because the story of America is always being written. Thank you for joining us on Inside USA. If you found this exploration of American history insightful, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next episode. We'll see you next time.